So anything that we just did won't be recorded. I'll go back and actually re-record that. So we're a little new at recording. But anyway, when you get to the SketchUp website, what you're seeing right here, it's, you know, as if they're trying to sell you some software. But what you want to do is look here under products, and it'll say for personal use, there's SketchUp free. Now, if you look at the plans and pricing and you go in and actually see this, there is a SketchUp free version, which is the one we're going to be looking at. There's another one that's SketchUp Shop for personal projects, $119 a year. So they've gone to an annual, I guess, pricing model. And then there's Pro. If you had a need for that, and if anybody's interested, I can tell you what these differences are. But if you were, say, making a plan and then you needed to present that to somebody professionally, that's what the Pro version is going to get you. The other thing is that these other versions are web-based, so you have to have an internet connection. But all of you guys are obviously on an internet connection because you're here. So, but that means you can't use it offline. So if you got on a plane and there was no Wi-Fi connection, you can't use it. But let's go back and look real quick. So back under products, we're going to go to SketchUp free. And these will be links that I actually have on the web page. So if you go to my website, if you go to katadair.com and then, or Kat Kramer, either one, there is a Helios link on the navigation bar. When you click it, you'll get to the links for this.
Yeah,
so what's that?
I need a question.
Yes.
Can download the program?
If you purchase the program, you can. But the version that we're using is a free version. There is also still, if you search it up online, you can download the previous version. The one I was just showing you is actually available to download for free. So if you needed more of the features or wanted to be able to run it offline, you can still download that. And I'll be sure, and let me make a note of that, but I'll make sure and put a link up for that one as well.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Even on the web version where you don't have to be on the web, once you design something, can you print it out so that you don't have to worry about whether you're on the web or not when you start making your project?
You could print it out, so, or create a PDF, so then you would have your plans, but it does require the internet connection if you're using this one. There may be version compatibility, so if you were to say like make something in this one and then try and open it at the other one, you can save a file out of this one for the old version if you want. So, but I guess I'll write some of those things down and then I'll put some notes on. I'm putting like an FAQ, I guess, for when we're done. So anyway, once you get to this section, you start modeling, and they will ask you to sign up or log in with, you know, maybe I guess like your Google ID, I think is one way they do it. But once you're in, this is kind of the interface. This is what it looks like. Over here, there's some buttons. For example, home is where you can create a new document or open a document. And when you open, you can actually go get a model from your computer that's in a SketchUp format, or you save them out on the cloud. So you're basically saving them out on Trimble's site. And so I have a bunch of things there on the site. Let me make sure I'm logged into the right one. Hold on one sec. I'm going to sign out and sign back into my other account. And you can see I'm using my Gmail account. There it is. All right, so this is where some of my other models are. So you can see it's actually, I'm using it in Chrome, but it also works in Safari if you're on a Mac. And let's see. So if I want to create a new thing here, I can choose a template. So for example, there's a simple template with feet and inches, or if you prefer the metric system, which we should be on, but we're not, you can choose that as well. What's interesting about this though, is that the first time that you launch it, you'll notice that there's a woman here. And basically she's to give you scale. So if I were going to make a table, for example, I would know kind of about how big a table would be. If I were making a jewelry, I'd be zooming in really, really close. It would be something small. But for example, if I wanted to draw something, let me get rid of her real quick. And I'll have a detailed tutorial that shows you this step by step. So if you want to go back afterwards and try and, you know, open the program and then do it yourself, then you'll be able to follow along and do this exactly. So right now I'm just going to demo it.
Can you draw kind of just loosely and then scale it to the size you want afterwards if you don't want to worry about all the dimensions?
Yeah, you can. In fact, when I do a room, if I'm actually sketching a room, I'll kind of block things out and kind of get dimensions, and then I'll go back and actually design furniture to fit in the space. But it depends on if you're designing it just kind of for fun or if you're designing it to build. So for example, if I were going to design something out of 2x4s, I would actually draw it with 2x4s. So I'll show you on this one. Whenever you start drawing, there's this line tool. And if you click on the line tool, you'll see it has like this little rubber band effect. But then as I come down one of the axes, I can type in something like 3.5 and hit return, and that is 3.5 inches. And if I come over here, I can type 1.5 and then come back and then go back. As soon as it fills in within SketchUp, what you'll see is it creates a face. So we had a series of lines, you know, like that. Or when we close them, we end up with a face. The cool thing about faces, though, is that once you've done that, you can go over and choose this thing called the push-pull tool. And this is where you click and start creating something that's three-dimensional. So in this case, if I were doing, say, a 12-inch piece of wood, then I can enter in 12 inches and I end up with something that's actual size. So what's interesting about that is if you were trying to build something that was 3 feet tall, well, we've already made this 12 inches tall. I can go back in and I can extend that another 24 inches, and that represents a piece of 2x4 that's 3 feet long. What's interesting though is once I've made this, I can modify it and change it, but I'm going to create something that's basically a unit. We're going to call this a leg, because imagine we're going to be making a table. And then you can copy these things. That's interesting. So I can make a copy of this, and then I'm going to select the other one and then move it over like that. Like you said, if you were just kind of maybe casually trying to design something. But what's really interesting about SketchUp is, let's say that I want my table not to be 36 inches, but I want to make it 34. Well, because I defined this as a leg, as a component, when I go in here and I reduce this 2 inches, it reduces all of them. So you can imagine if I was making a long table or if I was making a pergola for my patio, basically by defining things as a component, I can go in and basically make those all change at the same time.
Can you undefine a certain one of them if you want to change only it?
You can. Actually, that's a really great question, because if I select one and right click, I can choose to make it unique. And if I do that, then I could come in, like imagine if you were making a potting bench or something for your patio, you might want this to be a shelf that's higher. Oops. So you can basically redefine it as a unique object, and then you can change it. The other really cool thing about this is as you're building something, let's say I need to keep track of how many of this piece of lumber I have. When I go over here and check out the its info, in fact, let me undo one more time. Let me see if there it is. I undo until I can see that it's back where it was. When I select one, when I go look at the entity info, I can tell there's 4 in the model. So if I'm starting to write things down, so I'm actually going to build this, I could say, oh, I need 34-inch pieces, and there's 4 of them. So you can start to sort of keep an inventory. The paid versions, if you get into the paid versions, will actually kick out a materials list. But if you're in the free one, you have to manually actually go in and do this. Another thing you can do is, let's say that I was going to make some cross braces on this. And again, they're going to be 1.5 inches because that's my 2x4. I can come back and notice as soon as I fill that in, as soon as I connect those dots, I end up with this rectangle. And then I can just use that push-pull tool. But there's a really cool thing that happens with this too, where as I hover over another surface, it stops drawing. So it's exactly lined up with this other surface. And then I would select this whole thing and make it a component and call this side brace. Like that. Another interesting thing about it is as you copy things, you can choose a point. Like right here, I'm choosing a point and I'm just pressing Option or Alt. And you can see that it's kind of snapping to a green line. That's that it's on the same axis. And as soon as you get over here, because I chose a point, it's snapped to the other point. And then it's just a process really. Oops. If you ever do that, you just hit the space bar. But you can come in and just start drawing. It's a series of kind of drawing these lines. I'm going to come down. This time I'm going to hover over another point to sort of borrow its measurement. And then click and come back over here. Then I want to define this one as a component as well. I'll call it front brace. I'm going to just copy this one over like that. And then we have the top. And I'm just going to quickly just add another one. There's a bottom shelf in this that I did as well too. But let's say that I wanted that shelf to be 4 inches from the bottom. And in that case, you can use something, it's a tape measure. When you choose the tape measure, you can then click and create a guideline that's up here. And then I'm just going to go back in and create another 2x4 because that's what I'm using. Like that. Click, click, and then click and pull it over. And then I'm stopping it right here on this edge, which is basically the other face. And I'm just going to make this shelf brace, shelf back brace.
I'm sorry, what's the function when you're copying?
It's
You
actually,
said-
it's the move tool, but then you just tap Option or Alt. See,
Okay.
right there. So if I don't, there's no copy, but as soon as I tap that, and I can come into the front here. So I just made this copy, but I'm going to move this one back just a bit because I was in the design I had worked on earlier. I put 3/4 of an inch of trim, and then I actually moved it back another 1/8 of an inch, just so they're not flush at the front. And it'll make sense here in a second. And then I can also use a rectangle tool. So I've been drawing lines, but I'm going to use the rectangle tool and give it a dimension. And then pull this one forward. And then again, define it as another component, side shelf brace. And the reason that we're defining them as components is so we can actually count them later on. Because we don't want to pay the $299 a year to do it. So I'm basically just copying that brace over, and then you can see that we have kind of a top and bottom. And at this point, because these are all part of the braces for the shelf, you can use the Shift key and select them, right click, and actually group. So now this will move as, whoops, this will move as a unit. And then we can do that to the top as well. And we can also do that to the legs. So I'll show you. And as soon as we're done with this one, we're going to go put this in a room. So, all right. So groups are different because we're not naming them. But then we can go in and we can actually place a piece of virtual plywood. I'm using the rectangle tool here. I'm going to place a virtual piece of plywood on the top. So I made a rectangle. And then I use the push-pull to click and make that 3/4 of an inch thick. And then as with everything, you triple click it, right click it and make it a component, and we'll call it top.
I'm sorry, when you're sizing these things, are you entering the dimensions or are you doing it
Yes.
visually?
Yeah. So what happens, in fact, let me undo on that one. So I just made a rectangle and it's a single thickness right now. And then I use the push pull, choose that tool. When I click on it, oh, in fact, that's a really good point I'd forgotten to mention. One of the things about SketchUp is you're not clicking and dragging. So when I use the push pull tool, I'll click and release the mouse and then move up. And with, see, I have no hands. So you click release, you kind of move it in the direction you want, and then type 0.75 for the dimension.
Right.
So that's how you can get the accuracy with that as well.
Got it, thanks.
Okay, and then making the component, this is going to be the top. There it is. And then I'll do one more. I'm just going to do this bottom one. So I'm just going to make a rectangle right out to, and I can't get to this corner right here. So I'll just stop. And then I'm using push pull again. 0.75. This time I'm going to get a different view. And I'm zooming in. And then using the push pull tool to come back out. And I'm having a hard time getting it to stop on that edge, so I can use the edge of this other board. That's called a constraint on that. So there, I just need to triple click it, make it into a component, and we'll call this lower shelf. All right?
Oh, you use this a lot, Kat.
I'm going to do a slower tutorial. So this one's just kind of sit back, observe, and then I actually have a tutorial that shows this step by step. So you guys will be able to.
I have a really dumb question.
Yeah,
What's
what's that?
triple click?
A triple click is a left mouse button and then 1, 2, 3. So you're clicking 3 times instead of a double click. It's a triple click.
In an Apple where you don't have left and right mouse, what is it?
Do you have an older mouse? I'm on a Mac.
A real old mouse.
Oh, hey, Taylor, I see you over there. What I did is I bought this like $10 mouse off Amazon because I'm also on a Mac. And so it has a scroll wheel, which is good for zooming in and out, and then a left and right mouse button. And I pretty much just use that for doing CAD stuff, so. All right, you guys ready to paint? Should we stain it?
Pat, I have a question first.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Say you have that bottom surface area and you want that to be 1 by 1s with a 1/2 inch spacing between them. Can it tell you how many you need?
Absolutely. You want to do that? Should we do that?
Of course.
All right, let's do it. That sounds like a great idea. So you said like 1 by 1s?
That sounds good.
Okay, let's see, a commonly used piece of lumber that you can get at Home Depot, there's a it's 3/4 of an inch by 1.5. You want to do that one?
That's fine.
Perfect. So, whoops, there went my lights. Come on, lights. There we go. Okay. So what you would do then is you need to basically draw the outline of what that is. So I'll go up 3/4 of an inch, come over 1.5 inches, come down like that. I'm going to basically pull this like that. And then we need to define it as a component. And there's a couple reasons for doing that. One is so you can change one and it changes them all. Or the second one that's important is the program, it copies the information that you've used to create the first one, but then it just sees the other ones as instances. So it keeps your file size down a whole lot too. So there's a reason to actually do that. So let's call this a slat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to copy the slat. I'm going to use this corner right here because I want to put it over on this edge like that. So you go from one side to the other side, and then you do divide 12 and hit return. And so it's like, is that good enough? And I don't know. So let's try /14 or /16. And then you can kind of get a feel for how, how that looks. So if you wanted something where things could fall down through, that might be good. Or we could go in and even try 18.
Where was the divide command?
It's when you copy one and then copy it to the other end, and then you immediately, before you do anything else, type slash and then the number you want to divide it by.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, and likewise, let me show you another instance of that. So if I were to go over here, and I'm going to copy this one, and let's say I want to copy it right there. Then you can type X12 and hit return, and it will copy it out. So one actually takes it and then copies it over and over again. So it's, I guess, kind of like an array. The other one divides the space between the two. So just a slightly different thing. So I actually like that design a lot. That's really nice. So, and then another thing is you could come back. Maybe you don't want these edges to be exposed. In the design I had done the other day, I came in and did a trim piece that was like this. Come down 1.5, come back in like that. And then just pull this out. And I'm using this edge right here so I don't have to rotate around. I could rotate and use a key command like O and then go back, and then you can hit escape and keep going. But rather than kind of rotate back and forth, it's easier to use like the edges of things to stop the drawing process. But see, that actually looks really, really neat right there, and you don't end up with the ends showing. And then I would, of course, make that a new component. Bottom shelf trim. There we go. And then you could come in and put trim on the sides or whatever. But I like that. That's actually a really great design change. So how would you paint this? You can come over here to the side, and one of these is actually a materials selector. And any one of these that's open, like entity info, if you click up here in the little bar, it will close it. And materials, this threw me off when I first saw this version because I thought, wow, there's only 7 materials. That's awful. But if you click on this one, the little magnifying glass, you get all of the standard stuff you used to have in SketchUp. So here we could go down to the wood section and then maybe choose, this is actually bamboo flooring, but we'll just use it. But you can just click. And because these are actually part of a group, when I click, it's going to basically paint the whole thing. Now these other ones won't, because they're not part of a group yet. Let's see. But you could go in and individually do it or actually add them to a group, which is probably not a bad idea. And there's also some ways that you can select more than one at a time. So let's see. Okay, I'm thinking. This is called a crossing box, which is a little weird. But if you go from a lower right to an upper left, it will basically select anything that you touched. It can be a little bit confusing, but it's a way that you can select multiple items. We'll right click, assign them to a group, and now when we paint one, we paint them all. The grain's not the right direction, but that's kind of a minor thing. And then we could go grab some particle board and then paint the top. So there we have it. If you want to save it, it's pretty easy. You just click on the save up here. And when you see this SketchUp thing, this is actually saving it to Trimble's site, to the cloud. And then you can also create a folder. So we'll call it fusing, oops, not frusing. I can't type. There it is. And so I'll go to the Fusing Friday one and we'll say new table. I like it. All right, any questions? Anybody got questions so far?
Can you save to your hard drive?
It's actually saving to the cloud right now, but if you want to save it to the hard drive, click this folder, and then you can download it to your hard drive, or you can even export it as a PNG, which is just a regular image, a flat image, or STL would allow you to send it to a 3D printer. So a lot of printers can accept an STL format. And then it has some other things in here. See, like the OBJ file is another one for 3D printing, but that one is locked, and that's because it has to be on a paid version. So any one of these right here, if it has a lock next to it, that's something that you would have to upgrade. But for most of everything I do, you can just export it or download it. So
You can usually use a DXF to import into a 3D printing program.
yeah, on that one,
right?
DXF on this one is
Oh.
actually locked. It's
Okay.
in the paid version. But DXF and DWG are ones that are used a lot by AutoCAD. So the other thing, you could dimension this. So remember, we have our dimensioning tools. So if you needed to come in here and add some dimensions, and those are terrible dimensions. If I were doing woodwork, I wouldn't like those dimensions very much. 3'5" and 11/16. Oh my. We want to try and keep them in even numbers, so that's not necessarily a good one.
So
But
is there any way to come in and just tell it, okay, can you make that 3'6" and have it adjust the drawing?
the only problem with doing that, if you were just trying to approximate your space and you just sort of made a virtual table, yeah, you can actually scale it. So what you would do is just make sure that all of these guys are grouped together. And after they're grouped, then you can use the scale function. And so you could stretch it out and kind of make it different sizes, but notice what it does to the pieces of wood.
Right.
So if you were actually building this, this is distorting the lumber. So if you're just trying to say, hey, I want to put this in my room and see what something this size looks like, not a big deal. If you were actually making the plans though, you would want to reconstruct it. So kind of nice. So let's see what we can do. Another thing, let's see, would be to make a room. So let's go ahead and do that. Going to save. Any other questions before I go to that next one? You guys good? All right, let's talk about making a room. So in this situation, we actually have, this is Helen, by the way. Helen has a name. So Helen is, she's the virtual person. She's actually flat, but you can't tell because she's always facing the camera. But one way that you could approach doing a room is that you can use the measuring tools. So for example, if I use the measuring tape, I could maybe create a guideline and say maybe my room is 13 feet. So I clicked, I release the mouse button and I move, and then I type 13 with a foot mark. And then I can come over here and say maybe that this is 11.5 feet. And so there's kind of an approximation of the room. Then you can use a rectangle tool to draw a virtual wall, or in effect, the floor. Then the other thing that you would do is you would actually offset this for the thickness of your walls. And for what we're doing, we can just approximate that as being 4 inches. So we're going to use something, and I'm not sure where to find it over here yet, but I know the key command is F for offset. But you can bring this out 4 inches, and then that becomes your wall. Then you can switch back over to the arrow and then delete the floor. We're just going to get rid of it for now while we create our room. And then if you have a tape measure or even, you know, one of the, I guess the laser measuring devices, you can go in and figure out what some of these measurements are. But let's say that I want to maybe make a door opening that's about maybe, let's say 5 inches from the corner. And then I'm just going to make this with these different guidelines. So I'll make a 30-inch door. Then to get rid of these, I'd have to go back in and draw a line. So let me show this. So the guidelines just gave me something to actually measure with and snap to. And then when I go back to my arrow here, I can highlight these, select them, and delete them. So that would make a doorway. And then on there, let's play like there's a window over here on this wall, but I won't do that until I raise the wall. So then anybody want to guess what tool we're going to use to raise the walls?
Whatever the
Push
extreme
pull.
thing is.
Yes, yay, push pull. So we're gonna use the push pull tool, which
I'm
is this
happy
guy
that
right.
Helen can get out now.
What's that?
I'm just happy that Helen can get out now.
I know, right? We could also do a virtual walkthrough. See, there's some little feet right here. You can actually tell it what your height is, and then you can do a walkthrough. So we'll use this, and since let's imagine our walls are going to be 8 feet tall, which is kind of a standard. So that's what our walls look like. And then we need a doorway right here, and those are generally about 80 inches. So all I did is I switched to this tape measure, and I brought up a line up to the 80-inch mark. And with that, I can then use the line tool to draw a line. And then guess what tool we're going to use? Push pull. Yay. So we're basically just going to pull that over and then use the eraser, which I have to find. I'm still learning this. I just picked up this version about 2 days ago. So E gives you an eraser so you can erase those lines. Go up here, erase, erase. And there we have kind of the basics of the room. So let's go add a window. So I'm just navigating around. And a shortcut for navigating is you press O for the orbit tool, like that. And then I'm going over to the tape measure, and it is a T for tape measure. And this time I'm going to bring this line up to 80 inches. But guess what I can do? I can lock this in on that axis, on the blue axis, and then go touch the door, the corner of the door, to borrow that measurement, which is kind of cool. Except for I screwed it up and didn't do it the right way. Oh well, we'll just go with it. And then let's say that I know, now I'm gonna undo it. Sorry about that. I need to do this from the inside because I'm measuring the distance from the corner to the window. So it's better that I do it here on the inside. So same thing, I'll go borrow this corner just by hovering on it. And let's say that my window is about 4 feet from the corner. So I'm just using a series of guidelines. Let's say it went 3 feet this way, and then maybe 3 feet down. So windows are always measured, or almost always measured from that 80 inches down. So let's say 3 feet there. Now we're just going to use a rectangle. Click and click. And then guess what tool we're going to use? This is my trivia question.
Push pull.
Yay, push pull, which is a shortcut P. And then when you push through, it goes away. So there is basically a room.
So
Now
you don't have to tell it that the wall is 4 inches. You just push through until it disappears.
Yeah, in fact, you can go all the way through. Let me show you how that works. But if you went all the way through, you can see it's out that direction. I know, right? But if you kind of hover until it's sort of, it'll start looking a little bit weird. Oh, it'll say on face, and then you click and it goes away. And then I'll show you the other thing, this other selection method. Here I can actually show it. But if you did a regular selection box, like you guys have probably used that in other programs, this type of box from left down to the right will select anything that's enclosed within the box. So it got the room and it got Helen, both of them. The other type, I'm just going to press, I guess, get the arrow and then click on the background. This type of selection tool is from the lower right to the upper left. This is called a crossing box. It's only going to select those lines. I didn't have to enclose them, I just had to touch them. So I can use crossing boxes to get rid of the rest of this stuff. Okay.
That's cool.
There's some windows. All right, and then last but not least, because we want to lock this room in place, we don't want to modify it, because we could accidentally pull this wall out, and that wouldn't be good. So we're going to just click it 3 times, and then right click. And we're just going to group this one. It doesn't need to be a component. We're not going to use it over and over, so we'll just make it a group. And then you can right click and lock it. Turns red when it's locked, but now I can't accidentally move it. Helen can still move because she's blue. The room's not gonna lock or not gonna move. And then one last thing I'm gonna do is come underneath and use the rectangle tool to put a floor in. I just wanna see carpet or something. And then I'll select it, right click it, and then just group it and then lock it. So basically those things are fixed. So how do I get furniture in? And this is one of the cool things about SketchUp. So let's say that you've decided that you want to use some bullseye crates in your studio. There's this entity that's really cool called the 3D Warehouse. And what's great about the 3D Warehouse is that you don't have to draw anything, hopefully. But if you go out here to the components section, one of the options here, there's a home, which is everything in your model. But if you click on this one on the right, you can search the 3D Warehouse. And one of the things that I just put up there yesterday is a bullseye crate. And so you could click on this and it will insert a bullseye crate into your studio.
So if you make something like that, do you have to save it somehow to the 3D warehouse? How does it get to the 3D warehouse?
I actually created it within this version and then I uploaded it to the warehouse to share with other people.
Okay.
So, and that's one of the beautiful things about SketchUp is that it's been around for so long and people could actually make different models and upload them and share them. So for example, I made one when I was doing my parents' house that was a teak dining table. And so as you go out here, you can actually look and see that all these people have created models for teak dining tables.
Wow.
And you can see if there's any you like. And you may or may not find one, or if you search by name, so for example, mine is Trainer Kat Kramer. If you search me, then it'll actually bring up the models that I've created and added. So there's the Dark Teaks dining set. So if I click on that, I can add a whole dining room table to my studio for my own little open studio. But what's cool about that is then you can go get these models and like I said, I populated it and even stamped a Helios logo on the end. So if anybody does that, you know, if they use our models, then they'll see it. Or I could go get my small work table. And so once I've actually put these out there for the world, I can just pick them up and move them into my studio space. And in that move mode, remember we used the move tool to move things?
Oh,
It
wow.
also allows you to rotate.
How about the one we just created?
The one, okay, so to do that one, we're going to come out here to the little folder and choose insert. And instead of choosing from my computer, I'm going to choose Trimble Connect. Go to the SketchUp folder. Let's say Fusing Friday, and there's our table. And then I can insert it as a component. I'll take a second, and there it is.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and it did actually keep the measurements with it. Oh, and you might have noticed, remember when we stretched this, it actually updated the dimensions at the same time.
Yeah.
So then you can use your move mode or move tool to come in here and rotate. You hover over these little plus signs and then you can rotate it. And watch at the lower right-hand corner, you'll see it tells you an angle, which you could also enter. And then you can basically move this to the wall. And a trick within SketchUp too is that you want to move things along axes. So see how I'm moving the table along a green axis and then a red axis? That kind of ensures that it's going to be in line with what you want it to be in line with. Because if you pick it up, you could say, oh, wow, this looks great up here. right? But it's actually up above your wall, so that's not a good thing.
Are you doing some kind of shortcut key, Kat? to
Yes.
hold it? Okay.
Yeah. So when I'm going to the move mode, I'm pressing M for move. And then I might even find the center. If you see, it's actually snapping on the center.
Yeah.
So I'm going to click on that and zoom out. If I'm going along that axis, I can press the shift key to lock on an axis. And because I chose the center, I can come up and find the center of this wall and center it here.
Nice.
That. And then the other one, you guys will find this funny because remember I said I added these to the 3D warehouse? So if you search bullseye crate, I got real smart today and I made this table. I thought I'm gonna make a bullseye crate table and this will be great. Until I put it in the room and figured out that it's almost taller than Helen. So,
Think
Simon
taller than
Mark,
Helen.
for those who
Who's-
know me.
yeah, see, so this is like chest high for Helen.
So
And
how
that's-
tall is Helen?
Helen is, that's a good question. I think she's about
Because
5.
I'm trying to figure out how tall that bullseye crate would be to me.
This
Yeah. Same thing, Jenny. I'm thinking that's a perfect size.
Jenny, there's
Yeah.
actually a Tecta crate, which is about your size. So
Jenny, like everything, it's bigger than you.
Probably,
So
yeah.
can you copy Helen and rename her Jenny and give her new size dimensions?
Can you resize her? Can you make her
I
4'10"?
sure can. Hold on, let's see how tall she is. Let's use the measuring tape.
But can you resize Jenny?
Yeah,
Oh, don't I wish?
she's 5'1.5", Jenny. How's that?
That's pretty close. I'm just under 4'10", so.
Anyway, but I did find out today, this was news to me, that there's actually, I think 3 different sizes or 4 different sizes of bullseye crates. So I assumed that the one that was in the studio as a cutting table was basically a regular crate. It's not. So Paul had actually cut these off, so it's not the right height. So just be aware. So there is a way to go in and cut these down, but I'll address that in the other demo when we do the step-by-step. All right. So another thing that I had in here, let's say we want a house plant. Well, just by searching, I can actually go out and go find a house plant. And I think I searched it without a space. There it is. But something to notice, I don't know if you guys can see this. Some plants are very small. Like this one, I think says it's 0.04 megabytes. And some of them are like 15 megabytes. Your program will behave a lot better if you use a small one. So look for smaller file sizes. So you can go in and add a plant. I might move that in the corner. Again, because it's on the floor where I want it, I'm going to find that axis and move it over. And it's snapping a bit, so let me move the crate out of the way. So I'm just using that move tool, and I'm just gonna ease it over here to the corner, like that. Another thing, don't be surprised if you download stuff from people and it's a house plant that's taller than your house. So some people don't understand the scaling or actually drawing actual size when they upload it. And so sometimes those aren't real sizes. Let's see. Oh, somebody's chatting. Aw, hey, Taylor. Thank you. Taylor wants to add plants to his studio now. I hope it's okay I shared that. Okay, so let's say we need a flat.
Everyone, so.
What's that?
He sent it to everyone, so we all saw it.
Aw, cool.
Or at least he shared it, since your desktop is shared. Anything that goes to you is being shared.
Gotcha. Love it. Okay, then maybe you want a flat screen TV. So I'm just going to go grab a flat screen TV and then add this to my model. The other thing is that whoever created this model said that it will only stick to vertical surfaces, which is a good design thing. So when you place this one, it's going to stick to a wall. And then what's cool about it is you could actually come in here, find the middle of this TV like that, and then find the middle of the wall, and you can actually center it on your wall like that. That's another one. Let's see. Oh, another one that's kind of fun. You can add wallpaper or designs to your wall. So let's see, what should we do first? Actually, let's make a table out of a crate first. I'm going to move this one over. Okay. So I'm basically going to move this one over and then make it snap to the wall. And of course, I'm going again on those axes so I know it's in the right place. And then when we did the slats earlier, remember we did these slats? We're going to use the exact same technique because we can't make a table that big without a support in the middle. So I'm going to place my end one and then do divided by 2. So exactly the same technique that we used when we did these slats, you can use to actually make a larger table. And then if you were building this, I would recommend that you actually put some braces up here at the top. And I think if I'm not mistaken, Home Depot actually has some square dowel. I think that's 2.5 by 2.5 inches. So I started drawing the rectangle and then I typed 2.5 comma 2.5, hit return, and now that's 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. Then I can use push-pull to create a brace and then turn that into a component, and I'll call it table brace. There it is. And then you can just copy it to this other side. Use your shift key to select both of them, and I can just, I'm using the move mode again with option or alt to make the braces. And then using the rectangle, which is R, you can click, go from corner to corner, and then bring this up 3/4 of an inch with the push-pull tool. And then as always, you want to triple click it, right click, and we'll just make this one a group because we're not going to probably make multiples of those. But I can tell that this is getting crowded with my little desk. Oops. So I'm going to select that, use the move mode to move it over. And then I want the TV centered there. So I use that same thing we did before where I find the middle. And I'm going on this axis and you hold a shift key and then go find the center of your table and you can center it. So something like that. But you'll start measuring things. Like today I actually went to Helios because I can't get to my frit jars. And so I can tell you that frit jars, for example, are 3 inches in diameter for the small ones. So if I was drawing something like frit storage, I might want to create a virtual jar, or I might be making one for you and putting it up here later. But under the rectangle tool, you can actually choose a circle. And then when you click that, it goes by the radius. And if you look down on the lower right-hand side, it says radius is 1.5 inches. It's actually snapping on that. Uh-oh, there we go. My lights went off again. Oops. So 1.5 inches. And then you can raise it. Actually, the height is 4 7/8. So you use the push-pull and you could say 4, we'll just say 5. So that's kind of represents a frit jar. And then you right click it, make it a component, and we'll call it frit jar. Now you could actually map an image of a frit jar on there. It'll work. But if you were just trying to make like a shelf for your frit jars, you might make some virtual frit jars, and that way you could tell how wide your shelves need to be. If you were just doing a single thickness of frit jars, you could actually use 1x4s to create a very minimal shelf system. But if you wanted to use the 5-pound jars, those are actually about 6 inches in diameter.
So if you define a component and then accidentally erase it, can you reinsert it?
Yeah, you can. In fact, that's a good question. So I just deleted it and it's gone. Then when you're over here in this sidebar, if you go click here, then look in the home button. and your frit jar is still here. All of these, in fact, remember we put in the dining set and took it out, and then we put in, you know, some other stuff. It's not until you go in and use this little recycle button that it purges all of the unused ones.
Okay,
But all you have to do is click, and then you can drag a jar back out.
super.
So, but yeah, I mean, one of the things I know I have absolutely horrible storage with is frit jars. You know, so it makes you think, wow, I might make a, you know, some sort of a simple storage solution for frit jars. And I might use, I'll use the line tool to do this, but I'm going to say like 3.5. Okay. And then this one's just going to be 1x4. So that's 0.75. And then go back like that. And let's say that they come in, let's say a 6-foot length. So I just basically used push pull, and that looks super tall, but no, that's about right. And then again, as we always do, you triple click, right click, and then make it a component. So I might call that 1x4x6.
You know this too well, Kat. I can tell you're like zooming in and out using commands too.
No, I'm actually using the scroll wheel.
Okay, so if you scroll out, you can zoom up and out and in.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, an interesting thing, check this out. As I zoom in, if I zoom in on the object, it stays within view. But if I wanted to send that object way over here to the left, I can actually zoom in and out away from it to kind of control where I'm going.
Does Control plus and minus work like most programs?
I don't know, actually. I don't, let's see. Oh, since it's in a browser, I'm not sure. But generally with a scroll wheel, or even if you have a Mac mouse, like one of the Magic Mouse, it will actually let you scroll in and scroll out just by moving your finger up and down.
You're making it look really smooth, and I know I'm not going to look smooth when I first.
Do you have a scroll wheel, or do you have like a touchpad on your laptop?
I use I have a whole setup. So I have 2 monitors and
Gotcha.
trackball with a bunch of buttons.
Trackball will work just fine. Now,
Yeah.
and you can see how fast I'm zooming in and out right now. I'm on a MacBook, and that's just moving 2 fingers up and down on the trackpad.
Nice.
So it's pretty responsive. And now this one, I would have to think about buildability on this one, but basically you could copy this over just like we did. Click it, and then say maybe divide that by 3. And then go in and just start building whatever solution. I need to think about that one. Because there's the easy way to do it, and then there's the way that I would do it. But for example, you could actually go in here, and I'm just going to draw, let's see, that one's going to be 0.75, like that. One possibility is to make some shelves. Let me make a little shelf here. No, and I just screwed it up. Okay, let me show you what I just did. When I defined the component, I gave it the same name as something else in the model, and it screwed up the shelves over here because those were named shelf.
That happened fast. Does it give you a warning about that?
It did, and since I'm not used to this version yet, I just hit return, and it screwed them up. So if you're ever defining something and you've just make sure, take a moment and wait for it to actually ask that question. Now, another thing I had thought about doing too was making a shelf like this for my frit, because then I could actually get in and nail it from this side, nail it from this side. Because the problem is if you tried to make a shelf like this, that I can nail into the end of one, but I can't nail into the other one. So if you offset them just a little bit like that, you could actually make an interesting wall of frit jars pretty easily, with just 1x4s. Kind of an interesting idea. But I'll design one that's buildable with simple tools, because the nice thing about this is most of the things that you can build build within SketchUp, if you pay attention to it, you can cut it with a battery operated saw, and then just use a drill and deck screws, and you can make pretty much anything you want. So, and then this one I would use probably like a little brad nailer. And I think there's even a brad nailer that doesn't take a compressor that you can get. It's like a nail gun. Not a nail gun, it's like a stapler, but it actually shoots brad nails. And you can also use that old-fashioned thing called a hammer. I always forget about that. Anyway.
Do they have any other people?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know if you can just search people. Let's see.
Helen looks kind of 1980s to me.
They actually were real people.
So those are probably people that people have made and uploaded, right?
Sometimes. I know some of them were actually put out here. Oh, see, this one gives you a warning. Whenever it gives you the warning that says you've selected a big model, it can slow it down. That almost always guarantees it was done by a user. But you can see there's 1,600 pages of people. But the nice thing about ones like Helen, this one right here, it's a flat image that just is always facing the camera, like that. Now let's try a walkthrough real quick. So remember, we have these feet here.
She's like those pictures that the eyes always seem to be watching you.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so you can actually walk through, and you can see down at the bottom it says the eye height. So let's see. It's been a while since I actually set that. We can put the camera here. Eye height is 5'6", and then we can walk through. Or we could change it for Jenny.
Yeah, for me, you'd have to put probably in something like 4'7", because it's about 3 inches.
Right? What, 4'7"? 4'7".
Welcome to my world, people.
Right? We can be more aware of your challenges with this. So it's still, oh, it's still at 5'6". Let me see if, there it is. All right.
I mean, I joke about it, but when you get to things like table height, it's a real problem.
Right.
You know,
it really is.
I had to go out and make my own desk from just, table legs and a tabletop. And I went to IKEA because I could find table legs that would go down to 24 inches because I need a desk at 24 inches, and most desks are 30. But at 30 inches, I have, neck and shoulder problems, or my feet dangle.
Right.
If I have my chair set up high enough, so I have back and knee problems. So, I mean, we can chuckle about it, but when you're designing furniture, as long as you're going to custom design, that, it's a real struggle.
It is.
High height.
I think it'd be even more important in terms of your work table. We have students who are short, and we have platforms for them to stand on so that they can cut more easily. Because when you're around 5 foot, the 36-inch table height is not conducive to good scoring.
Yeah, we have a couple of those around the studio too, and I know at one point I told Paul, I said, I'm going to buy a stool to put by the flat wheel grinder if he's okay by it, because there are a bunch of us shorties who are very thankful we went. He ended up buying what I had hunted down.
Right.
And that's just so useful because you can really tire yourself out and hurt yourself.
Yeah. Or here in my closet, my seat, I actually, when I'm doing some things, I have to raise my seat or else my shoulders get really sore because I'm looking up, I'm not looking at eye level, and it actually makes me very tired.
But then you're probably lucky enough that then you don't need a footstool because your feet are probably still touching the floor.
I actually have a footstool. I do have a footstool.
My feet don't. Yeah.
For anybody who's interested, the crates that I'll be uploading here shortly, not tonight, but it'll be by the end of the weekend. Tecta crates are 32 inches. They're a full 8 inches shorter than this one. So there's larger ones, but the Tecta crates are smaller. They're about 32 inches by 32 inches and about 10 3/4 inches in depth. So from here to here. But
the Tecta sheets are 4 feet.
There's a larger, there's actually a larger crate for big Tecta, I think.
Okay.
But there is one there, I guess there's a sheet size. Tracy was calling them Tecta crates, and those were 32 by 32. So they were more square here. Another thing that Jenny mentioned that's actually really good to know, IKEA's furniture is up here. So you can actually, like if you go to their catalog and you say, oh, I love this wooden shelf thing, well, I can go in and actually add some IKEA furniture. Now that one looks super huge, but you know, one, for example, that I have in my studio is I have the Expedit bookcase, and I can click on that and then just drop it here in the studio. And then you can basically glue it to the wall. You use your move mode. So you click on that, grab a corner, and then I'm just gonna go out on that axis, hold the shift key, and then when you go back, it snaps to the wall. And I'll put that in the actual tutorial as well. One thing I noticed though, whoever made this,
on the floor, right?
they didn't anchor it. So that's where you just grab a corner with the move mode. You come down, use that shift key, and it'll snap to the floor. And then of course it's overlapping my new frit thing, but you just click on it and get rid of it. But if there are things, you know, for example, at one point they had like refrigerators. So let's say I need a dorm refrigerator because I'm keeping my snacks in the studio. You know, there might be a mini fridge. So I could go put a mini fridge in my studio. In fact, that one is up on the wall as well. So that's a little strange. Not sure why it's doing that. It may be because of the transition to the new program. But yeah, my construction class, I used to let people like design their backyard, and some guy put like a hot dog stand in his backyard with a pool. It was kind of fun. So, I mean, you can literally come up here and search hot dog stand.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is there an undo button like when you did the shelf and it changed the shelves in the crate?
No, actually, that's a great question. For most things you can undo, but if you actually redefine, a component like this, then there's no way to actually go back and undo. So what I would do is I would select this one, delete it, and then go back out to the warehouse and search bullseye crate. I'd find it again and then re-import it into the model. So see, now the shelves are back like they were originally. So that's the way that you would fix it, is actually re-import another model in.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll put some more of these guys. So like I said, when I made this table, I didn't realize that 40 inches was a little high. So I'll make the rest of the bullseye crates, and then you can actually, you can download those into your model and make things. Let's see. One other thing I want to show you too is how you can paint the walls. You see, we've got, there we go. So on this one, if I remember, I locked the walls, right? Well, if I right click on that, I can unlock. But there's another concept within SketchUp. So remember, we grouped this wall. Well, I can't edit it. If I paint it, it's going to paint the whole thing. Let's say I just want to paint one wall. So if I double click on this, you'll see these dotted lines appear. And what that does is it's basically opening up this group so I can now edit it. Then I can go over here to the materials, and let's say go to the colors. And maybe I want to make that wall spring green because I make everything spring green. So, and that's a little garish, but here, there we go. So then when you're done, if you want to get out of this, you just right click and close group, or you can, if you have the arrow tool back, you can just click outside of it and it will close the group. Another interesting thing to know is that you can have groups within groups. So remember our table here? It's one big group. If I double click it to open it for editing, that's a group. Double click again. Now it has the tabletop as its own group. So you can nest groups within groups. So I'll explain that better and probably more clearly when I do the actual tutorial. So you'll be able to see that there's part of the exercise that shows it. So another thing we can do, what? Oh no, hold on 1 second. It's telling me my Mac is about to go to sleep because I unplugged it. The adventures of the closet. Okay, so what if we wanted to put maybe an image on this wall? So let me open up this wall for editing. So I'm double clicking and I want to select that wall. Well, in the old versions of SketchUp, you would actually add it over here in the colors. But in this version, you go to the folder and say insert. And then you can go out to your computer and see if you can find something like maybe a Helios logo. And then you have the choice whether to load it as an image or a material. And I'm going to load it as a material. And I can come over here to the wall. And when I do that, it's probably going to repeat it. It did. So you can make your very own Helios wallpaper. And then if you wanted to, you can resize this. So once this is applied to a wall, you can go into the texture and the position and shrink this down. Like that. You can also move it around. So I might texture change that again. And maybe I want, up here at the top for that to be kind of lined up at the top right.
Kat, could you get that to just not tile like that so you could just get one image of Helios as opposed to a wall full?
Yes, so we'll go over here and we'll insert this time. We're going to go to my computer again. So there it is, Helios, open. And this time we're going to import it as an image. And so I can click, do like that. Oh, and it did actually do it as an image. That probably we'd have to paint this wall white again. So it's been a while since I've done this one.
Can it be resized or are you just stuck with whatever size it?
No, it should be able to, but you'll see, oh, it actually doesn't look all that bad. So I can move it over. And then I can use the scale button. And then just move it. And because the wall was painted white and then the logo is white, it kind of looks like it's not repeating. But yeah, I think that's probably the better way to do it. There, like that. So it's not photorealistic. There's a difference. Like if you go out to some of the sites where they're doing architecture, it's going to look photorealistic. SketchUp does not do photorealistic rendering is what that is. So like what you're doing, Jenny, in Blender. So Blender will render photorealistically. SketchUp does not. There used to be add-ons that you could do that in the full versions, but on the basic version, it probably doesn't do it. So anybody have any questions? Anything they would like to see?
When are you coming over to my house to build my add-on studio to my house?
Does it involve
I got plenty of yard.
I have a nail gun. What's that?
I have a nail gun. I can do the framing for you.
Kiln. I don't have a kiln. What's a studio without a kiln?
Oh, you're right. I don't keep mine in the house, but I actually did. Interestingly, let's look it up. I think we might have to add one.
I just never thought of wallpaper in my garage studio.
Well, we have vinyl cutters. Okay, that doesn't look like That's weird. A tobacco kiln? My goodness. I know when I blocked mine out a while back, I actually just made a polygon. Let me see if I can find one. No, there's a small kiln. Well, it looks like an opportunity to do one for the 3D warehouse. Okay, so what I did for mine, since I had an octagonal kiln, is I came over here to the rectangle and I chose a polygon. And the default is 6 sides. And I think mine is an 8 side. So you just type 8 and hit enter. And then you can create an octagon. So mine's something like that. So I actually built the model. I just blocked it out because I was blocking things out in my kiln, or blocking it out in my garage. So I didn't really pay attention to the details of it. I just kind of blocked out the shape. Then you could put it over. It's definitely not going to fit in there. And I think it's way too big. So
Well, plus you would have to add the safety margin around the kiln, the 12 inches around every kiln you need, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That might, when you make your model, that might not be a bad thing to do. Is could you do that with a model? Is say, here's the model, but nothing can come within 12 inches of it?
You know what I would probably do is I would probably do the polygon, same thing. Oh shoot, where'd it go? Oh, it's up here. Looking in the wrong place again. It's still an octagon. So let me say that I did this inscribed radius, I guess, would be, what is it? Mine's 24 inches, so 12 inches. That doesn't seem right. And it's not oriented right, but let's say I just kind of, was it 12 inches? Let's do.
Yeah, I think it's 12. It has to be 12 inches from every wall, anything around it.
Yeah.
I think that's right, but I don't have a kiln, so somebody else would have to
There it is.
verify that.
So you could do that, although, wow, that doesn't look right, does it? Anyway, you could do that offset, which is what we did the walls with. So we could maybe, you know, bring this up like that to be the kiln, but then leave this as sort of a, you know, here's my area that it's got to be. Or you just use a guideline. So like if you were over here, I would actually switch to the tape measure and then come out 12 inches and then basically set my kiln there. So
in the model itself, could you do something like so you had that, go back to where you had the little model.
Mm-hmm.
So in the area around it,
yeah.
can you add text on there to say safety zone or something like that? So when you upload the model, people would know, okay, this is a less than such size Paragon kiln and includes the safety zone around it.
Yeah, and let me check something real quick. And I apologize because, okay, that's cool. Ah, there's addition. Those are actually new tools. Let me find it. There it is. So it's under the rectangle one. You could actually put like safety zone. And that's huge. But then you could use your shrink that down. So you can do something like text if you wanted to attach it to the side, but it's, you know, something you'd have to play around with. Oh, like that. Or what I would probably do, Jenny, is I would actually make a graphic and then just paint it on the side. So kind of like what we did with the Helios logo. I would basically take something graphic and then put it around the edge. Is another thought. But see, what's great now is if you play around, you say, I've got the Paragon whatever, you can take photos, which is exactly what I did with this kiln right here, or not the kiln, but the crates. So you could take photos of the side of your kiln and basically just make a box. Let me see if I have access here. Let's see if we can see a city. Okay, we're gonna see if this works. This is kind of not part of the demo, but I'll see if this works. Because if you ever do a fly through in Google Earth, you'll see that the buildings are very detailed. All they did is they made a box and they mapped images to the sides of the box. So let's say we want to go to Austin, or let's say San Francisco. Okay, so it's going to go in, and of course the performance is not great right now, but if you zoom in, you get to a point and you can actually see it. See the buildings? Can you see how the buildings are three-dimensional? Let's see. Ah! Oh no, go back. See, this is part of the unplanned demo. But in effect, when you get into Google Earth and you start looking, those buildings, they didn't model every single building. I don't remember how to navigate, my apologies.
You stitched it all together, right?
Well, actually what they did is they used SketchUp. They used SketchUp to make these boxes, and then they mapped the images on the sides. So if you're able to get in and look, which like I said, I'm not sure how to do it.
I think they combined it too with some of the street view info because they probably have a sense of the shapes just from that.
Right.
Right.
I'm pretty sure a human didn't make those boxes.
No.
No, they actually, the original ones they did on major cities. So what they did is they put Google SketchUp out to the world, and they had people actually make the buildings in cities. It was crowdsourced.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and now it may be a lot more automated, but when this was going on back in like 2010, it was a very manual process. I donated a few models. One was the Toys R Us at Lakeline, which is now Specs. So I actually created some models, and then you could upload them as part of the community. So where we were going with that, I'm not sure. Anyway, you get the idea.
Ironic transformation from a toy store to a liquor store.
I know, right?
Feels like my parenthood journey.
Exactly, exactly. So.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
About the Helios emblem?
Yeah.
Could that go flat on the floor?
It could.
With that image, will it still go flat?
It should. Let me see if I can get in here and see if it shows up as a component. It may not.
Okay.
Let's see. And right now it's actually
just rotated like 90 degrees or something like that to get
should be able to. Let me copy it because see, it's right now it's part of this group. So I'm going to click outside and get out of it and paste it again. And see, so now it's actually flat.
Oh, okay. There it is.
But if I click it, it may not show up because it's, yeah. I can try and bring it up, but it has to do with the fact that there is no thickness to the floor. There is none, but anyway, yeah, so you can import stuff. Like when I do the frit jars, I'm going to take the frit jars and actually wrap an image around the jar. So there's a way to do that as well. There's a lot of different things that you can do with it, but if you are familiar with the concept of a lathe, right, where you're actually rotating something around a central axis, like if you were making a wine glass, for example, if you're making a wine glass, you would have the profile of the glass and you would rotate it around a center axis, and that would give you a wine glass. So when we do the frit jar, we would actually take basically a side view of it, like half of a side view, and then rotate that around an axis as well. In fact, I'll show you real quick. So what we could do, I'll just show you for fun, is that I can push pull, but when I do it, I'm going to press the Option or Alt key, and it gives me, it leaves a line there. And then watch what happens when I scale it. You see, I'm going to scale. And so I can scale that in. Whoops. You hold Option or Alt, it does it around the center. So then And I haven't done this in a long time, so bear with me. But then you can push pull again, like that. And let's say that's our lid, for example. You can also do something where you soften this edge right here, but you know, that kind of makes a reasonable facsimile of a jar. And then you could go over to your paint, to your material, find black for the lid, and then, you know, attach a label to the side. There's a way to project an image on the side of a rounded object. So see, it's not a perfect jar, but it's enough to kind of give you the idea. And this is a very simple model, so it's not going to weigh down your your overall sketch. So it'll still perform very well. And you can make 100 of these and it'll still be very lean. Because as a component, when you duplicate this thing, you know, I might say go over here and then divide that by 5, and there I've got 5 frit or 6 frit jars. So, any questions? Do you guys have any thoughts?
This has been great. Really, really good. Thank you.
Hopefully not overwhelming, but anyway, I figured as a demo, it kind of gives you an idea of what you can do. And so what my plan is that over the weekend, I'm going to finish doing the crates. I'll create the actual crates so you guys can just go up to the 3D warehouse. And when you do that, you can download the crates into your own model. And then I'll do a how-to, like literally how to build that little table that we just built. And it's a good exercise because it teaches you how to use the rectangle tool, push, pull. You know, you can do some other things in there, like with the line tool and adding trim, you know, multiplying an object and actually copying. So I think it gives you a good basic overview that you can use. And then there's lots of tutorials out there. Oh,
Hey, Kate, just example, can you put one tutorial on your example of creating a strip plate?
Yeah, I was gonna be.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna do that one as a separate one. So what I'll do, in fact, today I was just going to show the little strip platter, but we'll probably do another one that's a tutorial, a full-blown tutorial on that. So,
Kat, dumb question. Have you ever taken Richard Parrish's class? Because I was thinking this would be good to use the strips from that to create a tapestry before I take up my entire living room to try to figure out a design.
Yeah, and I mean, you could. I think the best thing with his that you could do is maybe even take the stringers, take a photograph, and then put it on something in SketchUp, and then kind of move those pieces around.
Yeah, so, that's kind of my question. And it may be covered by the strip construction once you do the covering of. So I think one of my questions in terms of that is can you do something where the you can snap something to a particular line? So I would say on a strip construction, I want a bunch of strips that come up to a midpoint line. So I have my strips that come in like this. Yeah. Can you get it so that these snap to that line, and can I make that line a curve so they snap to that curve?
Curves are a little bit weird and it's not perfect. So, oh, and hold on one second. I'm actually bringing in a piece of French vanilla at the moment.
Of course you are.
Of course I am, because that's my thing. Let me see. I don't know if it's actually in there. So let me import it again, or insert. So remember I said I actually had taken the French vanilla. I took a photo of it, and I can tell because it's performing kind of, oh, it's only 166K, so it's small. There we go. So I could make a wall of French vanilla. Wouldn't that be great wallpaper? Oh my God, I'm in love. There's my French vanilla wall. But you can move this around, you know, like I showed earlier. You can go in and actually position this in different ways. Because imagine, like when I did my French vanilla platter, I had French vanilla on the sides, right? So let me see. Let me go get it. Where'd it go? Oh, it's going to be which one's in the model. Since it's a pattern I had imported, it's going to be here. So if I paint the top of my wall like that, see how it doesn't quite match up? I could go in and actually adjust the position to try and get it to match like that. But I mean, in reality, like if I was doing this, I wouldn't be overly picky about it if it just kind of gave me an idea of what I wanted to do. So that's not